Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Pest from Arcona Games. Pest is a game but trying to heal all the various people around the countryside, wander around the board, trying to gather the people, rescue all the villagers and inhabitants from the plague that's crawling around, and trying to utilize all these people, make them healthy, use them in your own little engine, all while you try to play across 3 rounds of play and score as many points as possible. This, by the way, is a prototype. I'll have a link to the Kickstarter down below, and all rules, components, everything, all that stuff subject to change. But in the game, like I said already, you're going to be playing across 3 eras. 6 rounds of play, 3 eras, each era consisting of 2 rounds. And in each area you're going to have an agenda and an imperative. Agendas are going to be ways you score points in the game, and imperatives are going to give you ways you curry favor with the council. Meanwhile, the general structure of the game is you're going to have your own little tableau over here, and everything, by the way, over here is all very, very large. All the stuff's large, and I'm using a mix of deluxe miniatures and things, as well as various meeples from the basic version of the game. But over here you're going to have your own little player board, where you're going to be managing your tableau and your little action selection system. You see, there are 6 actions you can take in the game, as you can see on this little grid over here. We have collecting, moving, building, research, assigning people from your rescued areas to your little engine over here, and then healing people as well. You're trying to juggle those 6 actions. The tricky part is in every single round you're going to be placing workers. You're going to have 2 workers in round 1, 3 in round 2. Well, in rounds 1 and 2 you'll have 2, then you'll have in rounds 3 and 4 you'll have 3, and in rounds 4 and 5 and 6 you'll have 4. But each time what you're doing is you're going to take one of these over here and you're going to assign it to a little spot over here and take the actions on the intersection, which means you're taking every placement is going to have multiple actions associated with it as you slowly go through the rounds. But you're going to go ahead and place it down. Perhaps you want to go ahead and research and move around the board. Perhaps you want to build while healing people. You're going to be placing your workers trying to figure out which combination of actions is going to most suit your engine. As far as what these actions are going to do, the core idea of the game, the core cycle you're going through, is you want to go ahead and heal people. Healing people is going to give you points. As you assign people up to these tracks over here, you're going to get more and more points as possible as you go through this game over here. As you go through the end game, you're going to be earning points to go ahead and get more research, as well as you have to spend the herbs to go ahead and heal people. But when you get those people, you're going to be able to utilize those people to assign them to your own little engine to be able to have more and more things going on as you assign them to the various buildings you build. You're going to be trying to build buildings in order to get more of an engine over here and put them out on the board. And you're going to be trying to gather various research cards that will improve your engine in different ways, all while trying to juggle this kind of engine of keeping your resources up, keeping gathering more and more people, moving your plague doctor around the board, and ultimately gathering as many things as possible while you try to suit the agendas in a variety of ways and build as many buildings across the board. To that end, you're going to be using your plague doctor. Let me put this down over here. You're going to be utilizing your plague doctor to move around the board in different ways. So you take a move action and you'll move around the board following the various pathways. You'll see over here different pathways you can track, and you're going to be trying to move around the board 2 different areas, potentially healing people on the paths and locations as you wander around them, spending food where necessary. A single person doesn't require any healing, it doesn't require any extra food. You can just go ahead and heal them, add them to your 6th section on your board over here, where they'll potentially be able to heal, but you want to make sure not to overburden that, because if you overburden that too soon, you'll have to either send people to your graveyard, where they'll be worth negative victory points, or alternatively start clogging up your actions in a way that is really not helpful to being able to have as an efficient engine as possible. Alternatively, once you have enough people, so again, if we have this over here, once you've wandered around the board, you've gathered enough people, you can go ahead and take a heal action and go ahead and spend herbs to be able to heal these people, moving them up here to this area of the board. When you're done with that, you can go ahead and take an assigning workers action to be able to assign these workers to various locations. Using assigning worker action, assigning the workers to various locations to be able to improve your engine that way. So that's going to be covering the main actions you're doing over there. So you have healing, you have healing, you have moving, you have assigning. The other 3 actions are going to be just generating resources. We'll be able to take the resource generation action to generate resources based on how you've upgraded your board. You'll also have the action to be able to build out your research cards. This is going to be one of my favorite parts of the game, where you have these research cards over here, which you're going to be trying to build out a variety of cards over here. There's always going to be a selection of 4 cards on the board, 5 cards, one of the changes they made for the prototype. You have a selection of 5 cards on the board, which you'll be able to spend your research points on them to be able to gather these and put them onto your own personal tableau along the edges over here. You'll have 3 spots where you can put cards. Some cards have specific spots where they need to go. Others you can put them wherever you want, but you can always discard them at any point, although a little bit inefficient to do so. Those research cards will give you different ways of breaking the game, different benefits you have that you can play out, and that's going to be the research action over there. Additionally, you have the build action. When you build, you're able to build buildings spending the required goods, and money's going to be a wild good, but you can also trade in other goods for money, so everything kind of eventually converts, although you'll be inefficient if you're not careful how you do so. Be able to build buildings both in the capital city over here, as well as around where your plague doctor is. And then the last action is going to be the last action. We covered all the actions. We covered healing, assigning, research. Those are all 6 actions. We covered all 6 actions of the game. You're going to be checking these combinations of actions. Like I said already, with this little board over here, you're trying to figure out how you can assign your worker in a different way to those different areas in the way that they're going to be taking the actions you want, the combination of actions you want, being mindful of the fact that in rounds 1 and 2 you're going to have 2 workers, then 3, then 4 across the 6 rounds of play, and then being mindful of the agendas in the game as well as the imperatives. The agendas and imperatives giving you specific ways, going to be a whole stack of cards you can play out, all giving you specific ways as far as how you can be more efficient as you go through the game. Not just being mindful of your own puzzle, but being mindful of how the game twists that puzzle to try to give you specific things to go for. And lastly, from the main aspects, we're not covering every little detail of the various tracks, but lastly, we're going to have these aid and pest cards you're going to have it coming out every single round. Every round you're going to draw an aid and pest card, the combination of which are going to define a little bit of flavor text as far as what's going on, but more importantly how various people, more sick citizens spread around the board to what areas, as well as defining who is going to, depending on who has the most influence, what bonuses they're going to receive as you line these up with the next area, defining who gets the most, the least, depending on the bonuses you have, depending on your influence. And those are going to be coming out every single round as well. That's basically the game. You're going to rinse and repeat that across the rounds, gathering more people as you have them, trying to build up and build out your buildings as efficiently as possible, trying to gather as many points, trying to be mindful of the points you're trying to be mindful of the agendas and imperatives as you go through it, and that is basically Pest from Arcona Games. Which brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. Ease of play on this one comes down to a few different areas. It's going to be the table space is a big one offhand, which is worth mentioning. We'll talk more about this and what I like, don't like, and consider this not liking, but this is a large board. We're not even showing you everything that's going on over here. I have the player tableau kind of half here just for the sake of being able to semi-show it to you. There's a whole bunch of cards that'll be on the edge that I just don't have this. I kind of have everything clogged in a way that lets me show you everything. This table space is large. It's not unmanageable, and it's not like I've seen many games that have much worse as far as the pure components. This is just large. Everything's large, and so you do need a lot of table space, especially if you're playing this one at higher player counts. Game length is not so bad this one. It comes in, I want to say, depending on player count, comes in around 90 minutes. It could go a little slow if people are taking their time, but it also could move pretty quickly if people know what they're doing. The actions here are fast-paced. The biggest puzzle is how do you combine different things, so it's a little bit prone to AP as people try to think through, because you're trying to think through not just I need to take 4 actions, but which combination of the actions can I take, and I can't put the same person on the same intersection twice, so trying to figure out that balance, especially as you get more workers every round, can be a little bit AP inducing depending on the players. I would say on the fast end you're looking at 60 minutes, on the slow end 2 hours plus, but probably typically in the 90-minute range. As far as the rulebook, this is a big one for me. Personally, the prototype rulebook wasn't the best in terms of the general formatting. It is a prototype, again, rules, components, all those things, including rulebook, subject to change. But I found that the rules itself of the game are actually not that complicated, but the formatting and delivery of the rulebook could have been better as far as easier to jump into. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting with what I like, which is that action grid. That little action grid I've shown you over here is a fun puzzle that gets only more rewarding as you go through the game. When you only have 2 workers, there's only so much you have to consider because you can kind of think through what actions you need to take. The more workers you have, the more of a puzzle it becomes because you're thinking through, if I clog up the research and move action, will that work as I try to place one worker over here, and do I want to place that worker here, but then I'm going to want to do another movement action, but I don't actually want to do a heal action, so how do I try to configure the board, and in what order do I configure the board to get the most efficient puzzle possible? That pure, simple, that little grid over there that you're trying to manage, along with the engine of the board and what's going on the board, is one of the core puzzles that keeps me intrigued as far as what's going on, and managing that grid, as well as the imperatives of the game, and how the game shifts up the variability of what you're trying to strive for. This is not a game where you can just walk in and say, well, this is the core way as far as how I figured out the optimization puzzle. It's an optimization puzzle that will iterate based on what the other players are doing, and it will iterate based on the agendas and imperatives, and it will iterate based on the random board setup as far as how you're setting things out. There's a lot of variability as far as the core puzzle, and of course the research things over here, the research cards as well. That's one of my favorite parts of the game. These cards just give you powers and abilities on this whole stack of cards, and the order that these come out will completely change what you're going for as far as how you build out your engine, how you build out the buildings on the board. There's a lot of decision space, not in the core engine. The core engine is fairly linear. You're trying to gather patients, you're trying to heal patients, you're using that to improve your tableau, and you're trying to do that as efficiently as possible while being mindful of the agendas and imperatives of the game. That's the core puzzle. puzzle. But the variability within that puzzle of how you approach it is going to be drastically changed based on a variety of aspects of what the game is throwing at you, which makes it a very compelling puzzle to actually dive into with a fairly short, or not short, but a fairly accessible playtime relative to the strategic depth of the game. As far as what I don't like, first of all, I'm not a fan of the overall art and board over here. Following all these paths over here is not always the easiest. You can see everything, you could, but it's one of those things where the information is all there when you want to see it, but it's not always obvious at a glance as far as being able to see what connects to what. And the overall art and aesthetic of the game, just frankly, I mean, I love the box. The box art pulls me in very much, and the miniatures are very solid, but I would say the overall art and aesthetic is not heavily pulling me in. It's dark and it's gloomy, but it doesn't work for me as well, both from a functionality standpoint as well as just a what pulls me in standpoint. The table space additionally is a little on the obnoxious side. It's not that it's that large, it's that it feels unnecessarily large. It feels like a little bit of finagling could have made this a lot more accessible in terms of the overall board space. This is one where I'm really trying to desperately get it all on camera for you, and I just can't do so. And then lastly, I would say that at lower player counts, it is a little loose in terms of what it's doing. The game works well. There's a few aspects. We haven't even touched upon every aspect, including, the way you're going to rubber band over each other on this track over here. There's different aspects to the game we haven't fully dived into, but I will say it's one that works better at higher player counts as far as the level of interaction. At lower player counts, it can run the risk of feeling like a solo puzzle, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it takes away a little bit from the game when you're both basically playing multiplayer solitaire on the combined board. Don't get me wrong, even at 2 players, you could have a degree of interaction depending on how you just happen to wander around the board and start wandering into each other's areas, but at that point it ends up being a bit more happenstance. I think it requires minimum 3 players, ideally 4 really. 5 starts to run into downtime issues, ideally 4 as far as the level of interaction you'll get out of the game system. So I think it works better at medium to high player counts. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, the randomness of the Pest and Aid cards. The way those things come out and the way they'll impact players in the game, it's not a huge deal, but it's certainly an element of just things you're unable to plan for, even as you are strategically trying to take into account everything, you'll have something thrown in your face. And additionally, I mentioned it already, it is fairly linear in what you're doing. How you do it, how you achieve it, where you push those levers as far as what workers you place and what technology you get, those are all fun different things, but the core puzzle is gather people, heal people, utilize them to fuel your engine, rinse and repeat as much as possible. The core cycle is very much present. As far as final thoughts on Pest, this is a hard one to rate as far as prototypes go. Prototypes in general are always a tough thing to review and rate because you're reviewing and rating something that is a work in progress. But I would say particularly in the case of Pest, I feel it's possibly more a work in progress than other games. Aspects of the game have very heavily been changed, even just from when we got the prototype till when, small rules and adjustments and things have been taken care of. Even the initial pack had different cards you had to mix in and shuffle in different ways. And then past that, I would say there's a lot of small things that are quality of life things, from the rulebook, from the size of the components, from any number of different small things that all contribute to me being very torn in this one. From a pure gameplay stance, this is a 4 out of 5 for me. I really enjoyed the pure gameplay loop. I really enjoyed the tableau aspect. I enjoyed that little action grid and the puzzle there. There's a lot going on in Pest that is very compelling while giving you a fairly simple game, but one that gives you a lot of ways to manage that simple game. The research cards are a ton of fun to combine with the puzzle and the variability of how the game approaches things. There are a lot of aspects of Pest that are very, very appealing and very enduring. At the same time, there are also issues with the rules. There are issues with the general size of the board. There's issues with various aspects that are constantly in change and in flux of this game, which makes me a little reluctant to give it a 4 to 5 in its current state. So I would say it's a 4 to 5 with an asterisk that it could well be lower. If this were the final game today, it would be a 3.5 out of 5. There's a lot here that I like, but a few things that I'm complaining about, but also many of those things do fall under the prototype umbrella. So take that into account as far as rating and reviewing this one. A little bit of a mixed, a positive with caveats, I guess, is where I'd put my opinion of Pest. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you want another basically disease-healing game, I highly recommend Pandemic. Pandemic will give you the simple, pure, just wandering around the board, more cooperative in what you're doing, but wandering around the board, healing various entities and taking things off the board, just working together while doing it. And then something that felt a little similar in the way the game just kind of has you trying to efficiently hop around the board to do different things. It gave me small vibes of Istanbul. Very, very different in the gameplay, but both give me that puzzle of trying to figure out where am I trying to move, what am I trying to do, and trying to think 2 or 3 turns in advance as far as what my sequence is going to look like. It gave me similar vibes to Istanbul, a very solid game that I highly recommend. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.